Every dirt bike rider knows the struggle. You finish a great day on the trails, you roll your bike up to the truck, and then spend the next 10 minutes fighting with the tie downs. You're trying to balance the bike, tension the straps, protect the plastics, keep the handlebar straight, and somehow not drop it while you're working alone. It's awkward, it's time consuming, and it's a pain, especially if you haul more than one bike. That's why I'm excited to show you this lock and load Pro Dirt Bike tie down system. It completely eliminates all that frustration. With this setup, you can secure a bike in seconds, safely and single-handedly, with no straps, no tangled hooks, and no stress. But we're doing something a little bit different today. This installation is going to this 2023 Toyota Tundra with a composite truck bed, and that adds a little bit of a challenge. The factory instructions only show steel beds and wood trailers. So I'll show you how to reinforce and mount it properly for a rock-solid install that's ready for real-world use. Then I'll take it on the road and test how stable it really is, even with multiple bikes loaded. If you've ever wished loading your dirt bikes could be faster, cleaner, and more secure, you're going to want to see this. Before we dive deeper into the installation, let's talk about what makes the 2023 Toyota Tundra's bed different, because this one's not made of steel or aluminum like most trucks. Toyota uses something called SMC, or sheet molded composite. It's a high-strength fiberglass reinforced plastic that's compression molded into shape, and underneath it's supported by aluminum reinforcement rails to give it rigidity. So instead of relying on sheet metal for strength, the bed surface itself is structural composite. It's lighter than steel, won't rust like steel, and won't dent as easy as aluminum. That's great for durability and corrosion resistance, especially if you live where it rains or snows a lot. But like everything, there's a trade-off. Composite doesn't behave like metal when you bolt things to it. It's incredibly tough in impact, but it's also more brittle and doesn't like concentrated stress. If you over-tighten a bolt or clamp down on a small area, you can actually crack or crush the material around the hole. That's why for this installation, I'm adding reinforcement bars underneath the mounting points. Those bars spread the load across a much wider area and prevent the composite from flexing or cracking under the weight of the dirt bikes and the tie-down forces. In other words, it's not just about getting the lock and load bolted in, it's about building a structure that works with the composite material and not against it. So let's take a quick second to understand how this system works now that I've read the instructions. This base plate is going to bolt to the floor of the truck. It's got some mounting holes on it on either side. You're supposed to use at least 2 holes on either side, and then if you're bolting to a wood floor in your trailer, you'll want to use the other 2 sets of bolts on here. So what they're looking for is 8 wood screws to go into your wood floor on your trailer, or they want you to use 4 of the supplied bolts to go through your truck bed and bolt it in. So they want 2 over here in one of these 3 sets of holes, the same thing on the other side, and then you can disregard these 2 holes here if you're going to a metal bed. Now keep in mind we're doing this composite bed, but I think we're probably going to be safe with that method. We're going to go 4 bolts per bracket on here, and we're going to reinforce it underneath so it should be nice and strong and sandwich that composite bed in between 2 giant pieces of metal here. When we're installing to the bed, we want to make sure that our bolts, our holes, are going to line up at the high spot on the corrugated metal, or for us on the corrugated plastic here. So we've got the high ribs on here, and that's where the bolt holes are going to go through, and not the low spots, okay? So we'll need to line these up when we're ready and find out where exactly the best fit is going to be for these. Now, I want to talk about these arms here that come with it, and these are what are going to hold the bike in place. These are designed to grab onto the foot pegs and lock in place. So once you flip this lever down and you ratchet this into place, we're going to compress the suspension on the motorcycle right over the foot pegs and then squeeze it down tight. And if we do that with both of these, then the bike should stay stable. It also has a little adjusting wheel on here to put this in one of these hole locations. So as you'll see, once we get this thing mocked up the way we need it, that these will slide in from the sides into this floor plate, and then this red knob's got a little bolt that sticks through the bottom, and we'll want to make sure that fits in one of these holes. It's not supposed to tighten down against the metal bracket. It's supposed to go in a hole and keep it from sliding back and forth without the knob being tight. Of course, you'll probably tighten the bolt anyway on here, but it still has a little bit of room to wiggle because it's actually going through one of those holes on this adjustable floor bracket, okay? If I slide the other side in place, You can line up to your little numbers if you have some sort of pre-calculated measurement. It's got these nice numbers on here so you can line up your bracket with those, and that will help you get everything adjusted evenly on both sides. So the first thing in the instructions here is just to get your motorcycles mocked up where you want them. So we're going to put one here all the way to the right as far as we can. We'll put the other one all the way to the left as far as we can. And then ideally we want to be able to move these as far forward as possible. This truck's got a fairly short bed on it, so the tailgate's going to be down, and of course the rear tire is going to be resting on the tailgate. Not much we can do about that. Once we have it where we want to install these arms underneath the motorcycle. So these need to line up here with the foot pegs on there. So what we want to do is get these kind of in place where they go and see if we can get it lined up. Trying to get this motorcycle as close as I can to the side here, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm trying to leave room for a third motorcycle on this bed if we can. So we don't want this foot peg any closer, I don't think. I think we've got it lined up where we want it. If you look all the way down the side, we don't have a ton of room here. The nice thing about this lock and load system is it's supposed to hold the bike completely upright, so we're not worried about it tilting over in this direction or that direction. Once we squish it down and the suspension's pushing up on the lock and load device, then we've got this upright, and this shouldn't move anymore. This clearance should be about as far as we need to go. So then we'll take these little arms on here, and if we push it down, we can kind of get them lined up where we want them. So I'm going to slide this in and then kind of put it up against the pegs a bit and move this over as far as I can. And once I push this down, it should sit on those pegs. Now on the other side, I'm just going to do the same thing. You can flip this lever down and then just ratchet it down. I don't really want to squish it down. We're not trying to do anything. It's not bolted anywhere, but I want to just try to get a feel for where the motorcycle needs to be and where the stand needs to be in relation to it. So there are some red pads on here. I think just to center these foot pegs on the pads is going to be best for us. And once we've got it where we want it, then we're ready to mark it off. Now, I've got some tape down here. You guys can use a Sharpie if you want. If you wanted to pull the brackets off and drill the holes right away, you could, but I want to make sure everything's straight, square, and centered exactly the way I want it before I do that. Now I want to mention on this other motorcycle that these foot pegs are a little further forward, but what we want to do is we want to leave room for different motorcycles on here. I think this bike here is probably about as large as we're going to get into these stands. This is a 450cc bike. So what we want to do, we're going to set this other side exactly however this one is. This is the largest bike that we'll have on there. So it's the longest bike. And I think once we have the other one in place the same as here, this bike will probably sit back a little bit further, but it should fit perfectly in there. Now keep in mind, with normal tie downs, the front of the motorcycle has got to be pulled up against the cab of the truck, basically, the front of the bed. And with this system, we don't need anything on the front of the motorcycle, so it doesn't really matter exactly where it sits. That front's going to free float a little. Now, I did want to make one note on here that I've got the tires sitting in the lowest part of the corrugated bed. So it's in the dip there. I've got it lined up on front and back and just counted the rows over where I want it to sit. So I've got front tire lined up straight, and then our tools in place. I'm going to make a couple of measurements, and then we'll pull it out. All right, so I've got the bracket set up right about where I think it needs to be, and I'm using these outer holes on the bracket. So all four of those on the outside hole, they seem to line up best to my high spot at the edge of the corrugated ribs on here. So what I really was trying to do is trying to center these holes in the middle. I've got maybe about a 1.5 inch wide strip on there. I want the bolt drop down through the middle of it if I can. So it's a little bit offset on this side, and I've got it centered on the other side. I think that'll be fine. Let's get underneath this truck and see what it looks like. So we've got this composite shell on here, and it's got these aluminum rails to support the shell every so often. So what we're going to do here, I think, because of the way this layout is going to fit, is we're actually going to use a piece of this rail as our support, because we have our front bolts on the plate that bolts to the floor that will actually line up to that if we do this correctly. And then we're going to put our support bar on the back side of that. Right here at the rear of the frame, I can see where one of the bed bolts drops down through the bed and then into this bracket on the frame. And the rail sits directly on top of that. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to use the edge of this aluminum rail. We're going to try to find the center of the edge of that, and we'll see if we can get our hole to drop down right in the middle. That's going to give us great support for our bracket. And then we're going to have to put an artificial support somewhere down the middle of this above the spare tire. I initially bought one of these 10-foot sections of U-Track, and this U-Track is very sturdy, very strong. It's already got some holes in it, and I was going to lay this across the back of the composite bed in 2 spots, one in front, one in back, to get the edges of those plates that bolt to the floor. But since we already have that aluminum rail that's supporting the one edge of the bracket, I'm just going to go ahead and probably use one of these. So you can see here I've got some tape marking out the outsides of the bracket here. And what I want to be able to do is I've got to be able to get the motorcycle off of here so that I can accurately put some holes in this thing. And I'm going to make some last minute measurements on here, but this is going to give me the rough layout of where it needs to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and square it up to the rest of the truck bed and see if we can get some holes mounted. For the next step here, in order to access the bottom of the bed, I've got to get the spare tire down. So I've got all the tools out from behind the seat, and we're going to see if we can drop this to the ground. With the spare tire all the way on the ground, I can take this little hanger out and just pull our spare out of the way. So I don't have anything that fits perfectly in here. I may have been able to cut a piece of wood or something like that. But what I've got is my tape measure as a straight edge. I know it's not the best straight edge out there, but I've got it using as a straight edge to make sure both of my brackets are in line with each other and that they're somewhat straight and perpendicular to the lines of the bed. So this is probably the best method that I've got without a T-square or something, is just using these flat spots in the precast bed as a marker for me. I've got my tape measure lined up in here perfectly on that edge, and I think we've got it all squared up the way we want it. The next step for me is just going to mark those holes, or actually probably just drill the holes here while we've got the brackets in place. I'm going to be using my little Milwaukee cordless drill here, and I've got a 1/4 inch bit. This is just slightly bigger than the bolts that I have to hold these brackets in place. And then I'm just going to hold this in place. And you know, this is a composite bed, it's plastic. I haven't actually drilled into one of these before, but let's see, it should drill pretty easily. There, that's the first one. And we'll go for the second one. Before I go too crazy, I want to take a look underneath again and just make sure there's nothing underneath there that I can drill into. All right, so I'm looking underneath the bed right now, and I can see I've got a hole here, and I've got another one in the same spot over here. I've got one here, and one all the way on the side over there, and then I've also got some holes right above this edge of the bracket, right where I wanted it. I was hoping this hole would land right in the middle of this aluminum brace that goes from left to right. So it looks like those holes are lined up good. I don't see anything else in the way. I'm going to go back up top, and I'm going to drill all the way through that aluminum rail. Okay. I'm going to just blow off these hole surfaces so everything's nice and smooth. You can see I've got my hole in the rail and above the bed. Also over here, we've got 4 of them across. So my plan is to use those 4 holes that are already in the aluminum rail for my support across the bed on the bolt holes that go along the front edge towards the front of the car of the 2 brackets that bolt to the floor. And I'm going to use this channel here and see if I can line these up all the way across to capture the other bolts. So these bolts, I'm just going to drop them through in the locations that where they need to go once I get it in place. And you'll see they sit flush in here, and that's so the arms can slide in here and lock into place. What I'll probably do is put some tape on there to hold those while I get them caught underneath. There's one. 2, 3, 4. Same thing on this side. I'm just going to run some tape across here just to kind of keep these things from pushing up while I try to catch my nuts. If you have a helper, you probably won't need to do that. Okay, that'll just keep them from pushing all the way through. Now that we're underneath the car, you can see that I've got all my bolts dropped through all the holes exactly where I want them, and I'm glad we were able to get this to catch plenty of this aluminum rail on here. There's plenty of thread sticking out, so I think we're going to do, I cut this U-channel to 58.5 inches, and the way I determined that was just went to the widest part of the widest ribs on the edge of each side of the bed. That was 58.5 inches, and that gives me enough to come from side to side and make sure no matter what holes I used, I had something to catch on there. So the last trick is now to put this up in place and see if all the holes that are in the U-channel actually line up to my bolts. So far, we're looking good there. And this one not looking good. Not so good there. Better there, no. I think I'm gonna have to maybe, nope, that works there. And the last one there. Okay, so I'm gonna hold this in place for a second and show you now what it looks like with all the bolts through the U-channel. All right, so what I've done here is I've taken some of these large fender washers. I wanted to distribute the load as much as I could across this, and I also have in that U-channel, there are some large oblong holes in there. I wanted to make sure that we completely covered that. I've got these 1/4 inch thick fender washers. They're really strong, and I cut the corner off each one. I actually just ground it down in the grinder because I wanted it to be able to slide into that U-track. And once it slides in, now that's going to fit in there perfectly. With the full diameter of this washer in there, it wouldn't fit inside the U-track. So just a little bit off the ear of it, and I slid them all in so that they're all in place, and then I put the U-bracket up and I put my nuts on there. And I just wanted to mention too that I'm using nylock nuts on here. These are self-locking nuts. They've got a little nylon insert in them, and then once you tighten them down, they shouldn't back off at all. With these taped in place, it makes it easier just to get the nuts caught. So if you look along the rail, you can see I've got them inside the U-shaped rail. It's all loose right now. We're going to go ahead and tighten that up. So in order for me to get all this tightened up and get these brackets locked down, I'm going to take this tape back off that was holding our bolts down in place so we could get our nuts and washers caught from underneath. All this can come out of the way now. And then we've got a Phillips head here that we need to tighten. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab Zach, my helper here. He's going to go ahead and hold these up here. I'm going to put this up in the air and I'm going to tighten all the bolts from underneath. All right, so I've got all the bolts here on this rail, 4 of them that I need to get tightened up. And then on the factory aluminum channel, I've got 4 more. So I've got Zach up top. He's helping me out. I have my 10 millimeter here. And Zach, we're just going to go on that front bolt first. Can you go on the back bolt, please? I'm not going to tighten these all the way yet. Zach, come all the way to the side and the back bolt. This one? Okay. And then the other one in the front. Okay, now go diagonal to the back bolt. Ready? Back bolt on the inside of the bed. Here we go. Okay, and then go to the front bolt right across from that. Okay, and then we're going to come over here back to the side, do the back bolt, and then the front bolt. Let's double check those now that I got a good battery. Go back to the side front bolt. Ready? Okay, back bolt. Okay, then we're going to come over to the middle, back bolt. Okay, front bolt. How does our bracket look? Nice and flush? Yeah. Nothing's bending on it or anything? No. Okay. Okay, yeah. So we're on the back bolt. Let's run that in. Front bolt a little. Okay, let's go to the other side. Let's go back bolt. Front bolt. Okay, now we're going to go back to the middle and do the back bolt. Okay, you do that front bolt. And then we're going to come back to the outside, do the back bolt, and the front bolt. Okay, and then let me double check these one more time with a ratchet. All right, so you can see what my plates look like now, bolted to the floor. They feel very secure. I've got metal on top, metal on bottom, distributing the load across this entire bed here. I think we're in good shape with that. The next thing I want to do, I'm just going to slide these brackets on, make sure they don't catch any of the heads of these bolts. They are chamfered and recessed, so it shouldn't. And that looks nice and smooth on there. And of course the other one will go here. And then the other side. This one will go in first. Loosen this bolt a little. There's a little drag on there. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Maybe I had something caught in there possibly. And then this one. All right, that's good. So I think what we'll do, let's get these bikes test fit up here. I think that we're going to be pretty sturdy on here and see if these brackets actually work like they're supposed to. All right, so now I've got these two bikes back up here and fitted. I think everything is looking the way we wanted it to. They're in the right spots. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea what they look like in here. I'm shaking it around quite a bit, forward and backward. Same thing here, forward and backward, left and right. And then I wanted to show you what it looks like to ratchet these things up and then lock them back down again. So there are some tabs you flip up here. If you just flip them both up, and then all you have to do is push down on these things. I think it's probably easier to do them at the same time. 1 and 2, and then the bike is loose, okay? Now when you're ready to ratchet it back down, you're just going to flip those levers back down, bring them in close to your foot pegs where you want them, and then you can push them down. You can either by hand, or you can sit up there and push it. So if I were to get up here a little, click it, 1, 2. If you really want to get it a bit tighter, and there you have it. So they're installed. So let's take this for a road test, and I'm going to record here from the back of the truck, see what these things look like on the road with a little bit of aggressive driving as if you were going off-road maybe. This is our road test. Here we go. Well, we'll give it a wiggle test, hard braking, and then we're going to give it a little acceleration test. Let's see what it does. Hopefully the bikes don't fall out. Okay. Alrighty. Let me see what I can do a little off-road. You ready? What about some off-road? Here we go. Off-road. And a jump. Here we go. Let's go off-road. You ready? $60 miles an hour. Heavy braking. Tight turn. Speed jump. Another speed jump. Sharp edge speed bumps. All right, guys, there you have it. There's the full install, my version anyway. Like I said earlier in this video, they didn't have any instructions for a composite bed, but I feel this is as sturdy as it's going to get, whether you're in a composite bed or an aluminum bed or steel bed. I don't think it really matters. I can tell you just my initial assessment with this, I think it's going to work fine. I don't see any reason the bikes are going to fall out. I haven't seen them come loose after some aggressive driving there out in the desert. 50 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, no problem. Hard braking, turning, speed bumps, all those things seem to work just fine. The bikes are still tight. Everything's still in place where it belongs. I do notice there's a lot of movement in those arms, you know, left and right. They just kind of wobble in the brackets a bit, but not because the brackets are not installed properly. It's just because that's the way they fit in the brackets in order to slide in and out. So I think as long as you make sure your thumb wheels are tight, those can't slide around. They're in the holes. The pins are in the holes, and there's not any way that's going to come out of there. So I feel pretty comfortable using them. The manufacturer states this is all you need. No tie downs, no extra straps, none of those things. I think from my experience here, just getting used to using these things, it takes a little bit of practice just to set them properly. Make sure you have them locked where you want them, get them, you know, kind of set in the range of where they're on the foot pegs properly. I think a good thing to do if you're going to put the same bike in and out, maybe make some marks on the brackets with your numbers. You know, circle a number, put a little dot, something so you know exactly where to line them up each time. This way you're not trying to figure it out like the first time every time. So there's my install. I appreciate you guys following along. I hope you enjoyed this. If this is something you're planning on doing on your truck, you know, I think it's a pretty straightforward installation. No reason you can't get it handled on your own. We got plenty of content coming for you right over here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and thank you for watching the channel. Share this video with anybody you think can use it, and we'll see you in the next one.